Hello. Um, good evening. Welcome to my stream. I hope you've been enjoying my past streams or after recordings, however you want to call them. I will begin with chapter 16, and like always, I'll finish after 3 chapters. Forget my husband, I'll go make money. Chapter 16. A fiancé with a business addiction. Will this marriage be okay? Part 7. Seeing Jenny Karina wink at her, Aristine returned that with a smile. Why, that is very nice of you. That was the reply Jenica wanted, but her smile was a little stiff. Did she just drop formalities with me? Was this idiot looking down on her right now? Ah, my bad. Princess Jenica, can I speak more comfortably to you? The nerve. But Jenny Karina managed to squeeze out a smile. What a really annoying woman. She said my bad, but her expressionless face showed no sign of her feeling sorry at all, which was even more irritating. That actually, I'm rather shy with the strangers, is what she was going to say. But before she could, Aristine opened her mouth. It's because you remind me of my younger sister, Princess Jenica. You said you want me to think of you like my younger sister too, right? What? Karina couldn't say anything because she was speechless. Ah, were you perhaps just saying that to be polite? I'm not very good at making that distinction. I thought you were being serious. Aristine's gaze fell to the floor. I suspected of a beauty. That alone made her look pitiful and sad. Jenica grew even more irritated when she saw Martin sigh like he was feeling sorry for Aristine. How can I be serious? Why the hell would I want someone like you to think of me like your younger sister? There was only one person who could treat her as a younger sister, and that was her brother Hamil. But in the end, the words that left her mouth were, "Of course, I was serious, for sure." Jenny Karina forced a bright smile. So it's fine, right? Said Aristine. The sight of Aristine dropping honorifics immediately made Jenny Karina's smiling face crack. Her entire life, she had been able to keep smiling, no matter what happened, but she had never found it so hard to keep smiling before today. Damn it. Is it because she lived next to a wall her entire life that she's so tactless, or what? By considering what she saw her do to Pelemian earlier, it didn't seem like Aristine was completely tactless. Anyway, since the princess wanted to drop the honorifics first, there was no need for her to keep being formal. Well, then Jenica will also... Ah! Aristine cut her off. My younger sister always speaks respectfully to me. Even when she was very young, she never lowered her speech with me. Jenny Karina was momentarily struck speechless. Her mind went blank. Then, at that very moment, a burst of laughter came from right next to her. It was Martin. He tried to hold back his laughter, but he couldn't stop it from leaking out. His shoulders were trembling. Jenny Karina gave him a glance. Then she smiled sweetly. Brother Martin. Huh? Well, it's so funny. Jenica wants to know too. Ah, no, that is... That is? Sorry. What might you be sorry for? Did you do anything wrong to Jenica? Aristine watched indifferently as Martin was intimidated by Jenny Karina's attack. Then she looked away. Actually, there was a different person she had been wanting to deal with for a while now. Nefter, the king of Irigo. His sharp eyes, reminiscent of Tarquin's turn towards her. His turquoise blue eyes held a bit of interest. That's a good sign. When Starlina picked up a fight with her, she only made Starlina shut up for the sake of convenience, but it seems to have had an unexpected effect. The king of Irigo had taken interest in her because of that. He cares for Tarquin, so he must have wanted Tarquin's partner to be socially capable woman. Currently, in Irigo, the crown prince had not been selected yet. Hence, the fight for succession was fierce, and they were divided into factions. One side belonged to her prospective husband, Tarquin, and the other side belonged to Hamil, the eldest son and biological child of the queen. Like Hamil, Unicorina was also the biological child of the queen. The remaining prince and princesses were all from other concubines. No, Tarquin is the exception. Tarquin was not born from a properly titled concubine. He was born from a commoner woman, who was not even a concubine. That very birth was Tarquin's political weakness. Because of this, most of the royal family members stood on Hamil's side. The simplest explanation for this was that they despised Tarquin for being born from someone with a lowly origin. A slightly more complex explanation was that they were trying to exclude a new power that would cause them to share their existing aristocratic powers. The nobles united into one group and were trying to maintain the power they had established, one way or another. In the end, politics is always about fighting for interest. All the politics Aristine had seen through her monarch side were like that. Once all the members of the royal family had sat down, the court ladies served freshly brewed tea and refreshments. Aristine stirred at the teacup with rosy tea. The tea swirled in the teacup, and its smell spread through the air, giving off a pleasant scent. The glossy jelly that was served alongside the tea looked delicious as well, and it kept drawing her eyes. But today, I came here to deal. No, I came here to sell a product. Aristine wanted to prove to Tarquin how good of a salesperson she was, and she was pretty confident. Aristine had a very good memory. One thing for sure is that she had never forgotten anything she saw with her monarch sight. In the first place, Aristine was limited in what she could do when she was confined in a ruined palace, with nobody around. In addition, the monarch's sight was not something she could use because she wanted to, so Aristine spent a lot of time reflecting on what she had already seen. That was the only way she lived her life. Sorry. She would sit by herself, thinking over and over again about the outside world that happened to be reflected in the water. Even memory became something that could be trained. Aristine had a lot of things she remembered and could not forget. Plus, thanks to that habit, she gradually became able to examine various things when she looked into the past, present, and future with the monarch's sight. Not just people's conversation, but how pretty the flowers behind them were, or how blue the sky was, or how bright the sun was. She would always put things like that deep in her heart and recall them preciously in that poorly lit room. Naturally, her skill in observation increased. But one might ask, why was that important right now? Aristine had already seen the king of Irigo through her monarch's sight, not just one time, but many times. Thanks to that, Aristine knew the secrets of the king that even Tarquin did not know. That's the end of chapter 16. Now, chapter 17. A fiancé with a business addiction. Will this marriage be okay? Part 8. His Highness Tarkan has distinguished himself in battle once again. King Irigo struck his chin after hearing his advisor's report. You do not seem very happy about it. Of course I am happy, but I realize that this will invite assassins after Tarkan again. The assassins would not be from Silvanus, their enemy nation, but from Irigo, Tarkan's home country. Do you plan to make a move? For what? He can deal with this much himself. As he spoke, the king lifted the wine bottle and tried to pour it into the cup. However, clatter. The bottle slipped from the king's hand, falling to the floor, and as it rolled on the ground, the amber liquid inside drenched the expensive carpet. The chamberlain was startled and hurriedly approached to clean up the mess. I shall have new wine brought out. When he heard the chamberlain say that, the king shook his head. No need. All of you withdraw. Everyone in the king's study, including the adviser, quietly withdrew from the room. His Majesty said His Highness can deal with it by himself, but it seems he's still worried about His Highness Tarkan. I'm sure he is. That is his favorite child after all. If only His Highness was born from a noble woman. The quivering water surface ended with the scene of the adviser and the chamberlain talking outside the room. The vision that the monarch's sight showed her was only up to there. Aristine inwardly shook her head as she reflected on the scene in her memory. They are wrong. All of them were people who had wholeheartedly served next to the king for several years, but their guesses were completely wrong. That was not why the king dropped the wine bottle. Your Majesty, Jenica loves this jiggly jelly so much, so can Jenica have your Majesty's? At that moment, when Jenica was whispering to the king with a cute smile, everyone in the room was stunned by Aristine's sudden action. What in the world is going on? Their two eyes were working fine, but they couldn't understand what was happening. They couldn't believe the scene before them, even though they were seeing it themselves. Even Tarkan, who had been staying back with an attitude that said he would not intervene in the conversation, was obviously surprised this time. Princess? The first person to regain their senses was naturally the king. Nestor looked at the jiggly jelly, placed right in front of his lips. The jelly was incomparable to ordinary jelly. It looked plump and chewy, and its light yellow hue made it seem sweet and sour with an enticing glaze. Since Nestor was not the one who picked up the jelly with the fork, naturally someone who was holding the fork, and the person holding the fork was none other than the Princess Aristine. Royal Father, Your Majesty. To my father? Jenica screamed at Aristine. Jenica, you do not like that I call His Majesty Royal Father? I thought you called me family. When Aristine gazed at her with a sort of look in her eyes, Jenica's mouth flew shut. When I marry Tarkan, I will also call His Majesty Royal Father. After all, His Majesty will be my family, and my father as well. Of course. There shouldn't be a problem with me calling His Majesty that a few days prior, right? Aristine's attitude was calm, but in her eyes showed that she was a little worried that this might sour Neftir's mood, or that he might reject her. It was the eyes of someone who was used to getting thrown. But at this moment she was mustering up her courage once again. to possibly change something and take the risk of being coldly rejected. Nephthir opened his mouth. It is not a problem. Once the king made that declaration, then Ikurina looked like she was about to faint. Aristine's eyes trembled. Nephthir felt like for the first time he was seeing sincerity from the young princess who had just stepped out into the world. A tender sincerity under that hard shell. Aristine's cheeks reddened slightly. "I'm happy," she suddenly mumbled. Then the next moment, Aristine came to her senses and straightened her expression, then tried to give an excuse. No, I'm sure your majesty knows my situation as well. For some reason, she felt like she gained a real father, and it made her happy, even though he only allowed her to use the title in advance since she was going to use it in the future anyway. She knew she shouldn't give it too much meaning. However, she recalled a scene when she saw through her monarch side when she was a child. It was that of her younger sister, sitting on the emperor's lap, feeding him a spoonful of jiggly jelly. Aristine had also wanted to show off her manners to her father and feed him jelly while getting praised. So she used her fork to pick up a clump of dirt. "So what is this? Are you giving this to me?" Nephthir said, cutting off Aristine's incoherent speech. Aristine's eyes were a little swollen. She nodded forcefully and held out the fork a little higher. "Say royal father." A stinging silence fell over the tea table, and you could almost hear a needle drop. "No, wait. I thought she was quick-witted. Did she not understand what royal father meant just now?" Palemia wanted to pull out her hair. The royal father's question did not mean, "If you're going to give it to me, hurry it up." It meant something like, "What is this? Don't tell me you're trying to give me this. Get it out of my face." At least, that's how it sounded to Palemia, and even Martin, and Starling heard the same thing. After all, who was Nephthir? He was a great king who rules over this rough and vicious plain, riddled with demonic beasts. It was already bad enough that she had brought a fork of jelly to the iron-blooded king's mouth. But then she went ahead and say, Just watching it happen made her heart shrivel. Only Aristine was waiting for the king to open his mouth, as though she had no idea. Nephthir's tone was obviously that of someone speechless from disbelief. He was certainly not opening his mouth, as Aristine instructed. Instead, it felt like he was saying, Did you just tell me to say, No, it didn't just feel like that. He was definitely saying that. After all, Nephthir's blue eyes sank, looking icier than ever. Palemon hoped that Aristine would come to her senses now and apologize profusely for her disrespect. She came here at the queen's order with a light heart, but she knew she was stuck in the middle of a mountain. However, Aristine had never been one to fulfill Palemon's expectations, even if she was good at grasping the situation around her thanks to the monarch's side. Her experience in human relationship was pretty much close to zero. Using the words from her past life, when it came to conversations with people, her experience was practically the same as learning from a television. Moreover, rather than remembering her past life experience, it was more like she had seen it with the monarch's side. So far she had been nervous, so she considered things carefully before acting. But once her mood turned happy, she accepted whatever was said at face value. And so, as soon as Nephthir opened his mouth, he stuffed the jiggly jelly into his mouth, and he closed his mouth reflexively. "It's delicious, right?" Aristine flashed a bright smile and asked the king. The end of chapter 17. Now, on to chapter 18. Sorry, need some water. A fiancé with a business addiction. Will this marriage be okay? Everyone held their breath, no wanting to make a sound as they waited for the king's reaction. However, unlike when they expected, the king's anger did not strike down like lightning. All he did was make a vague and ambiguous sound. It didn't look like he was going to get that angry. No, he didn't seem angry at all. Just when everyone was finding it hard to accept the ongoing series of events, clatter. A sharp noise broke the heavy silence that had settled over the tea room. Yenikarina was staring blankly at the table, and her lips had gone so pale that all the color was gone. The tea that spilled from her teacup drenched the tablecloth. The red stain spread more and more on the immaculate white fabric. This all happened because Yenikarina's hand hit the teacup. Her hands were still trembling slightly. "What's wrong, Jenica?" Yenikarina turned to look at Aristine. Her senses slowly began to return. "Is there a problem?" Yenikarina flinched at the question and forced her lips to curl. "What might you mean? How can there be any problem?" Aristine's gaze moved to the table, which was now a mess. "Oh, this. The teacup must have been made wrong. The balance was off, so it fell on its own." After saying that, she began to scold the court ladies. "It should have been inspected properly. How dare you serve such a thing before his royal presence? Have you lost your mind?" Her voice was devoid of its usual charming cuteness. This was the first time that Yenikarina, who wanted to be loved by everyone, behaved this way in the king's palace. The court ladies felt wrong, but they had no choice but to listen to the princess. Aristine tilted her head to the left when she saw Yenikarina act like this. Is this something to be surprised about? She wasn't quite sure. The reason why the king had dropped the wine bottle was because of the pain in his right wrist. It was normally somewhat okay, but when he had to use some strength or use his finer wrist muscles, there was some subtle spasms in his wrist. Jiggly jelly was a local delicacy and regional product of Irigo, with an elastic feel and a smooth surface, making it hard to pick up with a fork. Even with Sylvanus nobles who were hostile to Irigo, used this jiggly jelly when learning proper table manners. They would practice how to pick up the jelly with a fork in one elegant motion. Since it is hard to be careful with this wrist, muscles in such situations, he can never eat this. And so, a very simple cause and effect situation was formed. Nestor liked this jelly, but it was difficult to eat by himself because of the pain in his wrist. Moreover, he did not want people to know about the pain in his hand. These 3 points resulted in one conclusion. It's fine if someone else feeds him. Nothing was clearer than this fact. However, something was off about this king's reaction. Maybe he doesn't like being fed. He didn't see anything like that with the monarch's side. Perhaps it displeased him because he felt like he was being treated like a child? How is it? It's good. The king quietly replied after some silence. His sharp blue eyes fell onto the jiggly jelly. Does he want more? Aristine picked up another piece and fed it to Nephthir. The king, who ruled over the barbarian land, quietly opened his mouth to be fed. Of course, even though he was being fed, his appearance still held the dignity of a king. Ah, he's eaten a lot more than I expected. Aristine thought as she continued feeding him the jiggly jelly, like a mother bird to a baby chick. I mean, even if he likes it, this was too much. A total of 7 jellies were served in accordance with the number of people around. But he was already on the 5th one. Jiggly jellies were quite tangy in nature. They were sour and also very sweet. So people normally ate only one. I've seen him purposefully order them to serve the jelly when his wrists are in good condition, but even then, he only ate about 2 or 3. Is it because he hasn't eaten it in a while? When she saw it in her Monarch sight, 3 was the maximum he ever had. Aristine was careful not to let the jelly fall while picking up the bouncy surface. This made it 6. This is a little troublesome, but I suppose I should be considerate, since he's injured. Plus, she was just a little bit happy that she could do this with someone who she could call father. Aristine put the jelly in the king's mouth. Now, only the last piece was left. Honestly, he was a little worried. I want to try it too. She had seen jiggly jelly so many times with her Monarch sight, but she had never eaten it. They say it's really delicious, that the sweetness and sourness go together so well that one bite is like having a party in your mouth. You might even feel like the sight in front of you was a town made of jiggly jelly. Furthermore, there was a high quality delicacy presented to the king. Ah, Aristine picked up the last one with her fork. It couldn't be helped. He didn't come here to eat jiggly jelly. It was to sell drugs. No, to show Tarkan how capable she was. Sometimes you have to sacrifice the lesser things for the greater good. She closed her eyes and conceded the last jelly to the king. Of course, the king ate it deliciously. It must be really delicious. He didn't even stop to take tea, and just ate all 7 in a row. Must be nice. While such thoughts were running through her mind, she heard someone sigh in disbelief at her side. What? Aristine turned to look at Tarkan, feeling doubtful. What was he so disbelieving about? Why exactly? Aristine was actually proud of herself. She thought she showed Tarkan that she had acquired a strong appeal. In other words, the ability to win the favor of those in power. Wasn't that a very central skill set? But aside of those beliefs, for that, it felt like his gaze was more towards the king instead of her. But either way, the king and Aristine were sitting right next to each other. To be fair, Tarkan doesn't know about the king's wrist condition, so he probably thinks this is out of the blue. However, the king was likely very satisfied, because thanks to her, he was able to eat his favorite food, which he hadn't been able to eat for a few years. Besides, I know he won't be worried against me because of this incident. After all, who would think Aristine knew about the king's injury beforehand? And that's why she fed him? Anyone who thought that far was probably paranoid. Furthermore, it would be hard to guess that Aristine knew something that even the king's chamberlain did not know. Even the queen didn't know about it. There were only 2 people in this world that knew about it. The king's doctor and Princess Jenikarina. That's the end of chapter 18. That's all for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please watch my streams if possible, or the after recorded videos, and feel free to support and appreciate the original work from the author. I'm just trying to do this to help people who struggle. And like the king, my mother struggles reading books. That's why I started doing this. No for any vicious or malicious idea in my head. I hope you enjoy.